This is the Celiac Project, two guys talking gluten-free. Just wanted to give a little disclaimer. We are not medical experts, doctors, dietitians,
nurses,
bone experts, surgeons.
We're only experts at being celiac patients.
So enjoy the show, and if you're going to do any changes to your diet or need real medical advice, please go to the medical professionals.
That's what they're there for.
You found the Celiac Project podcast, two guys talking gluten-free. I'm Mike.
And I'm Cam.
And what are we talking about on today's podcast, Cam?
Today is part 2 of my Colorado adventures, a little bit of the downside of my trip.
Yeah, we get into some things that didn't go maybe as great, but overall, Cam had a wonderful time in Colorado. Let's get to the show.
Sounds good.
So this is continuing
on.
Where were you?
So, yeah, as a mentor for my buddy, I didn't let him get too far. I'd stay ahead of him on narrow passes so that he didn't gain speed or go in a direction he shouldn't. So if I really needed to, I would just ride in front of him and crash into him, so that he couldn't go anywhere.
Right.
But once I knew when he had his, wheels about him, it was all good.
Gotcha.
Yeah, there was a couple times where we got stuck in the trees and it wasn't the greatest situation for him because he was new, but I was trying to tell him, you gotta go left at this part, and he went left too late, and then you're in the trees and then you're trying to get out, but it just gets wider and wider. Right. So you know how that goes.
Right.
But so anyway, so we went up to the top, and the top was the most memorable part for sure. Cutting off into the woods and being able to eat your lunch in the woods at 12,000 feet or whatever, a little bit less than that, 10,000 feet, 8,000 feet. The air is so clean, there's nobody around, there's no frequencies from cell phones or anything going on. So it's just the most peaceful place that you can get to relatively easily without having to truly backpack into the wilderness. It's kind of like wilderness light.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's really cool. I mean, either I'm the perfect person to talk to you about this or the worst, because you talk about being at a resort. I years ago skied at a couple resorts, nothing really fancy or anything.
Sure.
Doing bunny hills and the smaller things. When I was much younger, I did a little skiing, but never took so much to skiing, and certainly not snowboarding. But it's really wild that you were out kind of in the wilderness. Cam is now showing me a picture of them just completely in the snow in the wilderness. It seems very peaceful.
It's dead silent. It's awesome. Yeah. And one of our buddies, he was having a good old time. So you see the top of trees poking out from the snow, and you see the top of a tree, which means there's 15 feet of snow below you. So he was digging a hole, and he was trying to see how low he can get. He got all the way up to chest deep that he dug his hole into the snow.
Right.
But yeah, so it's crazy. But yeah, this is probably 20 yards in from a trail. So we cut off the trail, you ride in about 10 yards, you unclip, and then you walk another 10, 20 yards. That way, if anyone is trying to ride through the trees, you're not going to really be in their pathway.
Right.
And yeah, you got your own little hangout private spot.
As a novice, everybody who knows snowboarding is going to be laughing at me, but
yeah.
I know there's different kinds of snowboarding, right? We know
Sure.
Shaun White and some of these others do the half pipe and all of that stuff and do tricks and all that.
Yeah.
Is your goal in this kind of place, you're going down trails more like skiing in a certain way? I mean, when I think of even skiing, I think of you're at the top, you go to the bottom, but it sounds like you're able to do a more sort of design your own adventure type of snowboarding.
Totally. And then depending on, like I mentioned, I believe it was in part 1 about the fresh snow, when we pulled in, we drove through a blizzard to get there. So we had 10 inches of fresh snow the day after that we got there. And then the last day that we rode, we got 10 inches of fresh snow that night that we rode the next day. And so what that does is for the main runs in the beginning of the day, it's going to be completely powder, which is a alien-like experience to somebody who's never had it before. You literally feel like you're on the moon. It was so weird. So my friend has never had this experience before, and I was like, we really got to get out there for this last powder day when we go. And we just started riding, and we hadn't stopped yet, and we stopped about halfway down, and I looked up and turned up at him, and he had a smile on his face that was so ridiculous. I was like, oh, you get it now, don't you? And he's like, totally get it now. You can't explain it. I'm telling you, it's heavenly, it's space, it's being on the moon. It is the weirdest sensation to be floating at 30 miles an hour, because it's not like when you're riding on a groomer where you're on the ground and the board's chattering and it's being at a high speed. When you're floating, it's a weird sensation.
I got you. As someone who's never done this, you're doing a good job, I think, of explaining it, because I feel viscerally I'm getting an idea of it. Obviously, you can't really get an idea of it until you do it.
Yeah.
It's just killing me. I have to ask you, what was the danger? What was the thing?
Oh, when I had my whoopsie moment?
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. We had planned on riding as many days as possible, especially when we came in and there was that fresh snow on that first day. And we didn't ride that first night, even though, looking back, now we should have. A couple things got goofed up with lift ticket stuff. Some people may be aware, but like you can get a season pass and you get a certain number of buddy, friends, and family passes. They ended up being they were void until the following fall and winter season. So the tickets that I was going to be buying off of my buddy's season pass were no longer available. And then because I was having to buy the day of or the day before, they're ridiculous. It's like $150 a day, like something ridiculous.
Wow.
So I was like, well, that's not going to make any sense at all, especially if we're going to be riding 3 or 4 days. So I ended up buying a season pass. So I basically pre-invested into vacation next year. So I'm going to head that way for my birthday is what I decided.
Oh, nice.
I made my birthday
January.
decision. Exactly.
And maybe you can convince me to go along.
Yes, please.
Okay. Well, I know I've said this on a recording, but...
And if you just come to hang, it's a really beautiful spot.
It sounds beautiful. And we're both January babies. We are both Capricorns. We share a lot of things, and that's one of the things we share.
It'll be my 30th, too.
Oh, wow. That's really cool.
Ugh.
So, Cam,
sounds weird saying
So I'm
it.
guessing it's from a year when you buy it.
Yeah, and so I got early access. Like, there was basically a deal, like, you can use it now if you buy next year's pass now.
And this is the end of the season.
Yeah, but so anyway, so now let's get to the bad parts. So that was kind of a bad part because I did not want to invest that much off the get, but it was going to end up being valuable enough. So if I go on vacation one more time out there and use it, then it'll be like it cost me nothing. And if I use it more than that, then it becomes a bonus. So we'll see what happens. So I had all my food. I definitely didn't get gluten, or at least I don't think I did. We had 2 other housemates for 2 of the nights. My buddy's future roommates and actually past roommates were staying with us. They're all gluten eaters. They kept my area safe for the most part as far as I know, and I did my paper towel sponge cleanup in all cases anyway. So as far as following the proper protocol, it was gluten-free, quote unquote. But I definitely had some gnarly, weird reactions while I was out there. So part of it, obviously, a lot of travel and a lot of stress for me traveling in general. So that could have played a part.
The altitude also, right?
That could have played a part. I did really, really well with hydration and all of that. And in comparing to my buddy who was dealing with the same altitude and body change stuff, and he also actually has an autoimmune disease, but not as severe, and has his a little bit more in lock. So good counterpart to kind of measure against, but he does a good job fighting through much better than I. Like, I couldn't have done the things he did to get through the trip that I had to deal with. And he also actually even told me that he had a higher appreciation and empathy for me after, like, he knows my situation. We've been friends for years, but to live with me for a week straight and see it day to day, he had a higher appreciation for what I go through. So, like I said, you can hear it in me trying to explain right now. I don't know how to pinpoint what the hell caused my situation, but I kept waking up super, super early without wanting to. And we didn't do any crazy partying. There was no like late night crazy shenanigans. It was just totally regular, like we're out here trying to go to bed at a reasonable time so we can wake up early to go ride type of deal, just to keep that in mind. But I was waking up at 5:30, 4:30 in the morning, and I know it's an hour later, so like that's 5:30, 6:30 my regular time, but that's still super early. I was waking up before my alarm clocks, and I was dealing with a whole bunch of gut issues. So I don't know what the whole deal was with that. So the only reason I bring that up is rode the first 2 days kind of not too big of a deal, but then the third day I felt so terrible. I never made it out that day, so I actually had to skip a day of riding, which was a big bummer. So the double-edged sword, I guess, of the season pass was I didn't feel so bad because I didn't invest in a day. It was like, it's whatever, like I can go when I want to go. Gotcha. And because I skipped that day, I had enough energy to go on the last day, which ended up, they got the snow again. So it was perfect. So leading me to my whoopsie moment, the last day, my buddy was going to be doing a lot of the driving back, and he needed to rest up, and he wanted to go out there and get the powder experience. Like I had said before, you know, he had the big smile on his face, but he knew that he could only do one run and then he had to go back to the car, so then he would be all right. But he then would be happy that he got the experience in. And to him, too, it wasn't as big of a deal because he was going to be moving out there, so he knows he's going to be out there. So the whole, like, quality of time out there wasn't as important to him because he already got what he felt was his value or whatever. So he told me, though, to stay out there as much as I wanted to, and when I felt gassed to come back, and then we would head back. So I was out there alone, And my goal was going to be to ride. I wanted to at least just get to the very, very top, and then I'll ride all the way down, and then that'll be my one run. So I did the one run with him, and then I was going to ride up the gondola again, and then do all those connection flights. Like I told you, ride from the gondola to the lift, to the lift, to the lift, to the top.
And this was the day before you couldn't go out again.
No, this was the day after I was not doing, like I had to skip a day.
Okay, this was your sort of
last day.
Okay.
Yeah. The 2 more skip the last, as I call it. And so I got all the way up to the Parson Bowl, and the oxygen got real tight again on me. And I was like, oh, wow. Yeah, I forgot. It's a little harder to breathe up here than I remember. And I'm like, okay, so I'm catching my breath. I gave myself plenty of time, and I caught my breath and I started riding. And because of the powder, it was so easy to ride, but because of the powder, you also go slower. Like it takes longer to get down, even though you're still going fast. And I was using way more muscles, and I was breathing way harder. And in my mind, I was going to do top to bottom in one go. I don't know where I got this idea. And
how long is top to bottom?
It's a while. I don't know. It's a while.
It takes you approximately how long?
10 minutes, maybe.
Okay, wow. Okay.
Of solid riding. So, I mean, like, it's...
Right. It's a long way.
It's a while, like maybe 8 minutes, something crazy, though. It's a while. So I got to the end of Parsons Bowl, and I'm getting to the beginning of the Mary Jane Mountain part, and I started being like, I gotta catch my breath. So I stopped just to catch my breath, and I started to like kind of panic because I wasn't being able to. And then I looked around, and I realized I was in the middle of the woods, and no one was around me. And I'm like, what happens if I do pass out here? I'm totally goofed. And so I took my goggles off because I knew something like about seeing through the yellow lenses was messing me up, and I was just panicking. So I scooted off into the shade. I was like, let's just get out of the sun for a second. I'm going to take my goggles off. I'm going to try to catch my breath. And I did start catching my breath, but then I started feeling more unwell. I was like, oh, I'm still too high up to catch my breath. Like, I'm doing a little bit better that I've stopped pushing myself physically right now and that my body's cooled off, but I'm not being able to get enough oxygen still.
And where's your friend at this point?
At the parking lot, way away.
Okay, no one's near you.
Nobody's.
You're just all
I'm
alone.
Totally by myself.
Okay, that's crazy. Okay.
Yeah. And then so I was like, what I got to do right now is I got to ride down far enough so that I can catch my breath. So that's what I did. So I just got on the board and I was like, I'm not going to go too hard, but I'm going to ride and keep riding until I get low enough where I can catch my breath. And that's what happened. So I did finally get to that part, and then I had to figure out how to cut back over to get to the parking lot. It ended up not working out, and I got to the base of the Mary Jane Mountain. So there's like 2 different bases, but that's like a way higher base. And I ended up just calling my friend and I was like, hey, pull the car around and meet me at this lot. I'm done.
So that was the very last experience you had?
Yeah.
Have you had anything like that in your snowboard or skiing history?
Maybe I felt a little lightheaded from being dizzy once or twice, but the thing that's different was that I've never been totally on my own like that and had that experience. And that was where the panic started to set in.
Okay, so what do you think got you through that? You just took a moment.
I just knew that I can't stay there. I was like, oh, I gotta go. I don't even care, even if I am tired. Like you're gonna have to figure this one out because trying to rest is gonna be way worse, way harder. This area is dangerous. We got to get out of here. That's what was going through my head.
Okay. And you think some of that might have just been the exhaustion, like a cumulative thing?
Well, I think it was from being sick the day before. And then because I was sick the day before, I no longer wanted to eat any food for the rest of my trip. So I didn't eat. And I felt so much better because I was feeling so ill when I was eating on my trip, even though it was all safe foods. Then on my last day, I was like, I think I'm just going to not eat so much. I'll eat lighter. And I ate really, really light. And I did eat that morning a little bit, but it wasn't obviously nearly enough fuel. So it's like sometimes I'm battling, do you want to deal with stomach pain and digestion issues and like feeling kind of uneasy and running back and forth to the bathroom? Or do you want to feel kind of depleted, hungry, and then maybe get a headache or a migraine or feel dizzy later? It's pick your poison.
And this makes me think of something you said on our recent Celiac State of the Union in the beginning of May, which was that the gluten-free diet is still the only treatment, and it isn't even close to being effective for everyone, and that I can't help but think, you're in that situation. I know these situations. It tends to happen to me when I'm far away from home. Where is this stress? Did I get glutened? Is this the altitude? Is this
Sure.
XYZ? So those are some of the things that are frustrating about having celiac that add to our stress, where you can't pinpoint exactly what was going on. I'm glad that you got down from there, and I'm glad that you were able to keep your wits about you, because I'm experiencing some of the stress with you right now. That sounds really, really stressful. As someone who's experienced some sort of panic, sometimes when I'm in a mall or something, I cannot imagine being alone
At 12,000 feet.
12,000 feet on a mountain.
In the middle of the woods.
In the middle of the
by
woods.
yourself.
Well, I'm glad. Maybe we should try one last beer today, because we'll have to gather ourselves from that.
So you tell me, because I got another big guy, or I've got a little one.
Well, what do you want to do?
I'm open to either way. We can save the big one for another taste testing.
Let's save the big one.
We still have more of that one.
Unless you're worried that that's going to take up too much space, and whatever. I'm all good. Oh, we're going stout.
Let's go stout.
Okay, let's do it.
So up next in our two-parter here, we've got our third beer on the list, and that is the Riva Stout of Holiday Lee Brewing. And this one, they say, the Riva Stout is a beer named after a dog who is named after a ski run, which was named after a battle where the 10th Mountain Division bravely took Riva Ridge in 1945.
That's a lot of good history there. Dogs and battles. I love it.
Totally. Riva was a Bernese mountain dog and brings you a gluten-free beer as rich in history as it is in flavor.
Okay. And I'm trying to catalog the 3 or 4 gluten-free stouts that I've had. I know Glutenberg makes a nice stout.
And I'm open to trying Glutenberg now because I've been eating corn with no issues so far.
That's why you couldn't do a lot of the Glutenbergs. There's a couple that are corn-free, but yeah.
Yeah. Cheers, my friend.
Cheers. And I just can't help thinking, and I know I mentioned this on past shows, but my friend's sister just asked, is Guinness gluten-free? And it's weird that there's still people who are spreading that.
I think this one's my favorite stout of all the gluten-free stouts we've had.
It's nice. It's not as heavy as some stouts.
It's not as, like, in your face, kicky in the tongue, or whatever. It's got the coffee chocolatey flavor, but it's way more mellow. It almost reminds me of, like, a Coca-Cola in a way.
Yeah, I'm definitely getting the coffee. I don't know. A little Coca-Cola. I gotcha.
Like how it's caramely and cold.
Right. And cheers. Here's to you making it through your trip. I think I'm getting from you, it was definitely more positive than negative.
It was it definitely was. But it was interesting because I had one of those celiac moments when I got back where I was super happy I went on it. I'm definitely going to plan more trips in the future because to me, things aren't fun or worth it unless you plan trips that are fun like that. But I'm always just so disappointed or surprised or both at how much work it takes. And I know that that's special for us celiacs in our situation. And then obviously extra special then if you're still dealing with symptoms, because it's stress to have to deal with the food stuff. But then obviously like I dealt with the food stuff and I had to deal with not feeling well. It didn't feel like a total vacation when I got back. I was really glad I went on that trip and I got to do fun activities, but I didn't totally feel like relaxed and recouped and all of that sort of stuff. And I know that not necessarily anybody on a ski vacation comes back totally feeling refreshed and not sore or whatever, but that's not what I mean. I needed 2 days to recover when I got back. My body holds most of its symptoms up. So even though I was so symptomatic on part of my trip, which I was fine for the first 2 days, and then it was like 3-4 days where it got bad. And then when I got home, it was 2 days of extra bad because like my body knows that it's not ready to go into like relax and try to recoup mode until we get home.
You and I talked after the trip and we were texting and had a phone call a couple days later. I could sense, I knew from what you told me that it took a lot out of you, this trip and everything. And it's a good point too, Cam. You know, maybe I say this too often. I'm at a little bit different stage in my life. I'm not quite the adventurer you are. I mean, an adventure to me is maybe going on a cruise or doing something like that. And I really think it's great that you have that adventure spirit. You want to be out in the woods. You want to be snowboarding, and those are high pressure experiences. There's a lot of adrenaline that comes with that, and also it's much harder to kind of gather yourself.
Those are my stats from the trip.
So these are your stats for how many trails. Wow. So he went 2 days, 13 lifts. Can I?
Oh wait, hold on. Let me see real quick. That doesn't sound right. Like the updated one. Where is the most updated one? Okay, here we go.
Okay, so I'm gonna read from this app icon. I'm gonna read Cam's stats. So he went 3 days, 16 lifts, 45 trails. Wow. 35 miles, 26,283 vertical feet for 10.1 hours. Max speed, 48 miles per hour. difficulty, it's like mixed. It looks like about.
Yeah, that was because I was with my buddy, so it would be way more.
It would have been higher. He was like 50-50 on that.
It was like blues and greens or something, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm totally in awe.
I'm most proud of the 48 miles per hour. My goal, so like when we got out there on day one of the guys that we were riding with, he got 35 and I got 34. Because I was just warming up, I didn't ride this season hardly at all. And then I was pretty determined to beat 35, and I think I got 38. And then I was like, oh, I think I could get 40. And then I got 42. And I was like, oh, if I can get 42, I can get 45. And then I got 48. And then I was trying to get 50, but that's about where my gear starts to kind of crap out on me.
So you can tell instantly via this app?
Yeah, it GPS tracks you while you're on the mountain. It's really cool. So it's a bonus perk of that season pass, though.
Okay.
So
well, cool. Hey, the season pass, hopefully it gets you out on the mountain more often. And what did you learn about yourself? We're talking about this, and you were going to share another, you said the final day you had some harrowing stuff, I think, on the ride home.
No. I meant what I dealt with on the mountain on that. That was that last day of riding. On the drive home, it was just, oh. Sorry, I know what you meant now. This happened earlier in the trip, but because we had our hangout on the ride home, I didn't really talk about it up until then. But I have my GI doctor. I have my new general practitioner. I'm in the study, which has its own GI doctor. And then we have our GI doctors that we talk with through the podcast that are always nice to share their advice and offer their opinion. So back in January, I had scheduled an appointment that I had to wait till March to get to because the GI doctor was just that wanted, and that's how long the backlog was. And so when I finally went there, we came up with a protocol or something to follow to narrow down more issues, because I still have regular issues that I've been dealing with in the morning mostly. And it had something to do with SIBO and taking antibiotics, and I was already in the study, so then I brought that information to the study people, and they offered me their opinion, and I ended up making my own call. Because when I got back to my original GI, they never responded, even though they told me that it would be a 48-hour response or less. It ended up being 2 weeks, and it was after I had told them, well, since you didn't respond for 2 weeks, this is what I decided to do. Just wanted to keep you informed. I'm just being polite at this point. I need to send that. And then they told me, the doctor wants you to do this. And it was like the shortest response of a doctor message I've ever gotten. It wasn't from my doctor. It was from the care team or whatever. So one of the nurses or whatever. But they didn't acknowledge anything in my message. I felt very dismissed. So yeah, strange situation. So I don't know what exactly I'm going to do. I'm in an interesting situation right now with the study too, where I may or may not be able to continue with that. So I don't know exactly what my next move is for that, but it was kind of rattling to start your vacation off. And then I finally got a response from this GI doctor. So I was all upset about it, but I heard nothing but great advice about how I have to advocate for myself and that it's my call and that these professionals work for me and all of these sort of things. And one of my paranoias, and I don't know if it's valid or not, you and me talked about it briefly, and I definitely hope it's not, but currently with my insurance situation, I don't know if, being in my insurance category that I'm in gives me not as much care, or they don't want to help me out as much as they would if I was on a different plan or something. So I don't know what to think.
Right, and I'll sort of highlight what you were saying because you went fast, but what Cam is saying basically is that he was getting a lot of differing opinions from a lot of different doctors, and his main gastroenterologist gave him some delayed direction on taking this antibiotic that would affect the study. And also,
thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, and also it seems like most of the other doctors that you and I have talked to
don't agree.
And yourself, like know you, and I don't think you have SIBO, and I don't know, I'm not a doctor, as we say at the beginning, but the thing was you were kind of dismissed by not getting a quick response, and then you were also sort of dismissed.
Well, and even let's say I did go with the SIBO protocol and took the 2 weeks of the antibiotics and ruled that out, right? Then the next move was to give me some like anti-convulsant medicine, because what I was dealing with was dry heaving in the morning before work. So I don't know. It's complicated. And then my job was seasonal, so I'm on unemployment currently, and I'm not having to wake up at the same time. So the dry heaving stuff virtually has gone away because I'm not being demanded to wake up. But going back to the vacation thing, I was still dealing with it then. So it doesn't matter. And it wasn't even necessarily about being woken up, because I was waking up before my alarm and vomiting, dry heaving, diarrhea, etc., all of the above, stomach cramping, stomach ache, no appetite. Like, I don't know, like, all the symptoms, they always change a little bit, but it's like, these are all the things that I deal with when I'm dealing with something in the morning. And it's not every single morning, but it's more mornings than not.
Right. I feel for you. You're in this sort of weird area here, grappling with not getting really great guidance from your main doctor. And I know you're probably searching for a new one. And I think it's so helpful that you share this with the listeners, because I know so many of our listeners are in similar boats where they're having trouble getting the full story, full amount of information. And we will update everybody as this goes on. And I'm sorry that you had to deal with that. You know how I feel when your doctor put you off 2 weeks. That was sort of a red flag to me.
Totally. And that's never happened before. And then even though I sent another message, they never acknowledged it. So it's like, that's 2 red flags now.
Right. And I know we're getting near the end of the show today, and we will follow up about that on a future show.
Yeah.
Can you share? I wanted to ask you one question. How did your friend, how did he feel about your training? Where is he at as a snowboarder at the end? We got to end sort of on a high note.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, double high notes. So I'll bring back again. He did great, made huge strides, obviously didn't get injured, which is the number one thing. And he had a struggling first day out that he was not so happy about because I dragged him through the woods unintentionally. But he needed that experience, because I was trying to explain, I was like, you're not going to get through your snowboarding career without ever having that happen to you. And if that's the worst that happened to you of that type, it wasn't that bad.
So drag him through the woods. How does that work?
Well, like, we were on one run, and I'm always trying to keep him on runs that he can do so he doesn't get worn out, like stay on greens versus blues. Or if I know it's going to be a slow green, then take the blue instead, because then you got to unstrap and walk. It's like a whole big thing. I gave him all the tips. When you go snowboarding out west, the things that tire you out aren't the riding. It's the walking from one spot to the other, or getting stuck here and having to climb back over there, or missing this, and it's the in-between stuff. It's the booting up, and that's what takes all your energy. So if you can figure out how to do those slow, easy, and efficiently, then the riding you can focus on and spend your energy on. So yeah, he did great. I think he understands the concepts now. I know he's really looking forward to next season. We're definitely going to get out again. And it was interesting being out there, because the last time I felt optimistic was the last time I had traveled, and that was right before the pandemic. And I went with my dad to Big Bear to go snowboarding. So I had a lot of refreshing memories like that. And that was the whole putting myself in a mindset where I was like, could I see myself living out here? And that's why I did. I got the contact info, and I wanted to do this show first, and maybe I'm going to reach out to Holidaily and see maybe if there's an opportunity out there for me.
Hey, maybe so, and maybe we'll take the show on the road. And thanks to Holidaily for chipping in some extra beer. And
yeah, thanks Justin, to the tap manager, again, for coming out. It was such a cool experience, and you really made us feel special.
Yeah, maybe in a future show we'll talk to them about how Holidaily came to be, and really enjoying, like you said, the stout is certainly the top stout that I think I've had. Thank you for sharing all of your experiences. I'm glad you made it through. I do think, you are an inspiration, Cam. I think it's great that you push yourself. This isn't going to be easy. Prepping for it's not going to be easy. And, just getting in that altitude, and just from reading your stats, I know you didn't go easy on yourself. So cheers to you for, pushing through. And I hope to do something like this with you in the future. But thanks everybody for listening, and we will see you next time.
Sounds good. See ya.
Thanks for listening to today's podcast. If you like the show, please leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to the podcast. This will help new people find the show. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.